If you're reading this, you probably think you know what happened between me and my stepbrother. Let me tell you right now, you don't. Not even close. My name is Lila. I'm 17, and this is the story of the summer everything changed. The summer I learned what it means to be lost, to be found, and, most of all, to be seen. But let's start at the very beginning. With a suitcase too heavy for my arms, a town too small for my dreams, and a house that didn't want me. You know that feeling when your whole world is packed into a single duffel bag and dropped into a stranger's living room? That was me. My mom had married Mark only 4 months ago, but to me, he still felt like an accidental guest star in the sitcom of my life. Awkward, well-meaning, not quite sure where to sit. His house, now our house, had polished floors and echoing rooms. The kind of place that looked perfect on Instagram and felt colder in real life. But the strangest part wasn't Mark. It was his son, Evan. Evan was just a year older, a senior, already accepted to some fancy college in the city. He moved around the house like a ghost. Never loud, never angry, just absent. Brown hair always falling over his eyes, hands in his pockets. He spoke in half sentences and polite shrugs. I heard stories from my mom. Evan was going through things. He needed time. Didn't we all? The first week felt like some kind of silent endurance test. Breakfast where the only sound was spoons scraping cereal bowls. Evenings spent listening to Mark explain the house rules. No shoes in the living room. No loud music after 10. No slamming doors. It wasn't home. Not yet. The truth is, I missed my old life. My old friends. My bedroom with the crooked window, and the poster wall and the creaky bed that only I could sleep in. Here, everything felt borrowed. I felt borrowed. And then something changed. It happened on a Wednesday, 3 days after we moved in. I came upstairs from another forgettable dinner, already dreading the usual scroll through endless TikToks and messages from friends back home who were moving on without me. My door was closed. I remembered leaving it open. Weird. But when I stepped inside, the air felt different, charged, like the moment before a storm. And then I saw it. On my pillow sat a small, hand-carved wooden bird. It was beautiful. Delicate wings, tiny painted eyes, a tail so intricate it looked almost real. I picked it up, half expecting it to flutter out of my hands. The wood was warm and smooth, as if it had been shaped by someone who cared about every detail. I stood there, just staring at it, my heart pounding for reasons I couldn't name. Was it from my mom? No. She was still unpacking boxes and forgetting to buy bread. Mark? He barely knew how to order pizza online, let alone carve something like this. That left only one possibility. I looked out into the hallway. Evan's door was shut, a strip of yellow light peeking from underneath. I hesitated. Should I knock? Ask him outright? But something in me, the part that was always too quick to speak, held back. Instead, I set the bird on my nightstand and sat down, the soft hum of the ceiling fan my only companion. The bird watched me, quiet and patient, as if daring me to figure out its secret. I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to ask, why me? But the words stuck to my tongue like honey. The next morning, I woke up before anyone else. The house was silent, except for the distant sound of Evan's guitar, through the wall. Soft, unsure notes. Half a song, half a memory. At breakfast, Evan slid into his chair across from me. His eyes never left the table, but I noticed a fresh cut on his thumb. I almost said something about the bird. Instead, I asked if he wanted the last pancake. He shook his head. It was like that for days. Little glances, awkward silences, moments that hung in the air like questions without answers. But every night I found myself turning the wooden bird over in my hands. Sometimes I'd imagine it was a message, a clue, a secret code just for me. Other times it felt like proof I wasn't invisible. Not completely, anyway. A week later, it happened again. This time it was a notebook, simple, blue, with a ribbon tied around it. On the cover was a single word, brave inside, pages filled, with hand-copied quotes, be yourself, everyone else is already taken. You are stronger than you think. I laughed, then almost cried. Someone was watching me. Someone cared. For the first time, I started to wonder about Evan. What was he really thinking behind those quiet eyes? Why was he helping me in secret when he barely spoke to me in daylight? I started leaving my door open on purpose. Sometimes, I'd catch a flash of movement in the hallway at night, Evan in his worn hoodie, slipping past with a book under his arm, pretending not to see me. It was like we were building a bridge out of silence, one careful gift at a time. Of course, our parents noticed nothing. They were busy learning how to be married, stumbling through new routines and old arguments about bills and groceries. But something was changing. Slowly, quietly, in the space between my room and Evan's. One night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, tracing shapes in the shadows, trying to make sense of the ache in my chest. Was it homesickness? Or something more complicated? A longing to belong, to matter to someone who actually saw me? I got up, tiptoed to the window, and looked out over the backyard. There, in the pale glow of the porch light, I saw Evan sitting on the swing, knees drawn up, lost in thought. Suddenly I understood. Maybe he was just as lost as I was. I wanted to reach out to say, "Thank you for the bird, for the notebook, for not letting me disappear." But I didn't. Not yet. If you're waiting for some shocking confession or forbidden secret, you won't find it here. What you'll find is something messier, quieter, and infinitely more real. A story about the gifts we give when words aren't enough, and the way a single act of kindness can pull you back from the edge. So go ahead. Judge me, if you want. But remember, sometimes the thing you can't resist is the one thing that saves you. And that summer, what I couldn't resist was hope. I used to believe the hardest part about moving was saying goodbye. Turns out, the hardest part is what happens after. The waiting. The not knowing. The strange ache that comes from missing things you never thought you'd lose. The neighbor's barking dog, the wobbly banister, the sound of your best friend's laugh in the next room. Here, every day felt like walking through someone else's dream. The house was too neat, the silence too loud. My old life was slipping further away, memory by memory, and nobody seemed to notice, except Evan. After the bird and the notebook, I half expected the magic to stop. Maybe it was a one-time gesture, a fluke, a moment of accidental kindness. But a few nights later, I came home from another awkward day at school, dumped my bag on the bed, and froze. There, lying in the center of my comforter, was a small packet of wildflower seeds. On the front, scatter me. Grow something new. No name, no explanation. But I didn't need one. I smiled for the first time all week. The next morning, I tucked the packet into my jacket pocket. In biology class, I let my thumb trace the edge of the paper, a secret talisman against the low hum of whispered gossip. At lunch, I sat alone under the shadow of the bleachers, replaying every glance, every half-smile, every time I'd seen. Evan slipped past my doorway at night. Was he watching? Was he waiting for me to notice him too? The truth is, I did notice, even when I tried not to. School wasn't getting easier. On my third day, a girl named Harper decided she didn't like the way I wore my hair, the way I walked, the way I breathed. She had a pack of friends who followed her like satellites, ready to laugh at every cruel word. It started small, whispers, giggles, a nice outfit, new girl. By Friday, I found a note taped to my locker. "Go home. Nobody wants you here." Crumpled it up before anyone could see my hands shake. That afternoon, I almost didn't go home at all. I thought about wandering the park until dark, about sitting at the bus stop and pretending I had somewhere else to be. But my feet took me back, like they always did. Evan was in the kitchen when I came in, unloading groceries for our parents. He barely looked up. But as I passed him, I heard him mutter, so quietly it was almost nothing. Some people don't know how to mind their own business. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't have to. Later, I found another note in my room. This one wasn't cruel. It was a single sheet of lined paper tucked inside the blue notebook. Sometimes it's easier to talk without words. I sat on my bed and stared at it for a long time. I wondered if Evan ever felt like that, like he was trapped inside a shell, speaking a language nobody else wanted to learn. That night, I finally planted the wildflower seeds. I knelt in the damp grass behind the garage, pressing each seed into the soil, careful and slow. The earth was cool under my hands, and for a moment, I let myself believe that something new could grow here, that roots could reach down even in strange ground. When I stood up, Evan was there, just inside the back porch, watching. We locked eyes for a split second, long enough for me to see a flicker of something soft, almost vulnerable, before he looked away. He left the door open behind him. Our parents were fighting again that week, money mostly, but also the invisible. Lines of blame and expectation that come with new marriages. Their voices would rise and fall like a tide, never breaking into outright yelling, but never quite calm either. Evan and I learned to disappear. I'd find him in the garage, working, on a battered old bike or sitting in the backyard with his headphones on, sketching something in a dog-eared notebook. Sometimes I'd sit nearby and read, both of us pretending not to notice the other. Sometimes our silence was almost comfortable. One afternoon, a storm rolled in, the sky turning heavy and electric. I watched the rain streak down my window, a blur of gray and silver, and tried to remember the last time I'd laughed. I thought about the bird, the notebook, the seeds. I wondered what Evan was doing, if he was thinking about me too. Then my phone buzzed. An anonymous message. Look. Under your bed, my pulse jumped. I glanced down, half expecting a prank, but there it was, a flash drive in a clear plastic case. Curiosity winning out over nerves, I plugged it into my laptop. A playlist appeared, for rainy days. Song after song, soft, haunting, beautiful music. I'd never heard, but instantly loved. Each title felt like a secret message. Start again, you are not alone, brave enough. I listened with my eyes closed, letting the melodies wash away the ache, the noise, the feeling of being an outsider. Thomami. Next morning, I tried to say thank you. I found Evan in the garage, tightening the chain on his bike, grease smudged across his knuckles. Hey, I started, the words catching in my throat. He glanced up, then back down. Hey, I almost asked, why do you keep leaving things? In my room? But I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I held out a granola bar from my backpack, awkwardly, like a peace offering. He took it without a word, but our fingers brushed for just a second, enough to send a jolt through my heart. That weekend, our parents took off for a day trip. Bonding time, my mom called it, for the new couple, not for us. I woke up to an empty house, sunlight streaming through the window and the delicious thrill of freedom. I wandered downstairs in my pajamas. On the kitchen counter was a note in Evan's handwriting. Check the backyard. I padded outside barefoot. The grass was wet, the air bright and sweet after the rain. There, by the fence, was a row of tiny green shoots, my wildflowers. Stuck in. The dirt was a plastic flag. Lila's garden. Do not disturb. I laughed, the sound surprising me. I wasn't used to the taste of joy here. Evan was sitting on the porch steps, scribbling in his notebook. He looked up as I approached, a small, secret smile curving his lips. Thank you, I said. He shrugged, pretending to be uninterested, but I saw the light in his eyes. For the rest of the day, we existed together in easy silence. Me reading, Evan drawing, a radio humming in the background. When our parents came home, the peace shattered, but the memory stayed. That night, I found a new letter on my pillow. You're braver than you think. Don't let anyone tell you who you are. For the first time, I believed it. If you think this is just a story about gifts and secrets, you're wrong. It's about two people learning to see each other, without words, without expectations. And as the mystery deepened, so did something else. Hope. You might think the hardest thing about having a stepbrother is learning to share a house or a bathroom or the last piece of cake. But that's not it. Not really. The hardest part is learning how to let someone in, when you've spent years building walls to keep everyone out. That wall between me and Evan? It was thinner than I realized. I just didn't know it would break. all at once. It started on a night that should have been like any other, but the air in the house was different. Heavy, restless. I could hear our parents' voices echoing down the hall, bouncing from the kitchen to the living room. They weren't shouting, not exactly, but every word felt like a door slamming. Evan and I hid in our separate rooms, pretending not to listen. I sat on my bed, hugging my knees, watching the shadows dance across the ceiling. I wanted to disappear, to shrink so small I'd fall through the cracks and never be found. Instead, I found myself wishing for another note, another quiet gift. Something to remind me I wasn't invisible. Then came the softest knock at my door. Just once. Barely there. When I opened it, no one was waiting. But on the floor was an origami crane, folded from bright blue paper, wings stretched wide as if ready to take flight. I picked it up, holding it in my palm, feeling the delicate creases. The tiniest message was written on one wing. Not alone. Blinked fast, fighting the sting behind my eyes. Before I could change my mind, I crossed the hallway and tapped on Evan's door. For a moment, there was nothing, just silence. Then the door swung open. Evan stood there, looking more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. He wore a faded hoodie, sleeves pushed up, hair a little messy. Behind him, his room was all shadow and soft lamplight, a fortress built of music, drawings, pinned to the wall, stacks of books everywhere. He glanced down at the crane in my hand, then back at me. "Can I come in?" I whispered. He stepped aside without a word. For a long time, we just sat on the edge of his bed, saying nothing. I held the crane in my lap, turning it over and over, searching for the courage to speak. Finally, Evan broke the silence. "They fight a lot," he said, his voice low. "Even before your mom moved in. I guess it's just what parents do." I nodded. "My mom used to fight with my dad, too. Sometimes I think that's why she wanted to move here. Start over, but..." "It's not really different, is it?" Evan shook his head. "No, not really." He picked at a loose thread on his blanket. I noticed the calluses on his fingers, the faint ink smudges on his wrist, evidence of a life lived mostly inside his own head. "Do you ever feel like you don't belong anywhere?" I asked. Evan looked at me then, really looked, as if seeing me for the first time. "All the time," he said quietly. We sat in that fragile, honest silence, the air between us softening. It was the first time I realized how alike we really were. Two strangers, thrown together by fate, both longing for a place to belong. I liked the bird, I admitted, and the notebook, and all of it. Thank you. He shrugged, but there was a flicker of relief in his eyes. "It's easier than talking." "I get that," I said. "Sometimes words feel too heavy." Evan smiled, the smallest, shyest smile. "Yeah, but sometimes you need them anyway." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a battered sketchbook. "Can I show you something?" he asked. I nodded. He flipped through page after page, drawings of birds, trees, cityscapes, wildflowers. Each one was full of color and life, a world I'd never known he carried inside him. "You're really good," I said, meaning it. Evan looked embarrassed. "It's just how I make sense of things. When I can't sleep, or I'm mad, or scared, I draw. It helps." He tore out one page, a delicate, swirling night sky, and handed it to me. "For your wall," he said. I took it carefully, like it was the most valuable thing in the world. For a moment, our hands touched, and I felt a strange kind of warmth. Not romantic, just real. We sat up late, talking in low voices while the storm outside raged. I told him about my old life, my friends, my favorite pizza place, the time I'd broken my arm trying to climb a tree in my backyard. Evan told me about his parents' divorce, the way he'd moved 3 times in 2 years, the dog he'd had to leave behind. We both laughed at the memory of his first day at this school, how he'd worn his shirt backward all day without noticing. I admitted I still slept with a nightlight, even at 17. None of it was earth-shattering, but it was ours. At some point, the thunder faded, and the silence was just silence. Not heavy, not sad. I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. "We should make a pact," I said impulsively. Survive this summer. Together. Evan grinned. Deal. We shook on it. Awkward, formal, and silly all at once. If things get bad, we meet here, I said. No matter what. Even if it's 3 a.m, he teased. Especially then, I replied, and we both laughed. The next morning, the world felt lighter. Our parents, tired from arguing, stumbled through breakfast like nothing had happened. But something had. Evan and I shared a look across the table, a secret pact, invisible to everyone but us. From then on, things changed. Not all at once, and not in ways anyone else would notice. But the wall between us was gone. We started hanging out in my room or his after school, listening to music, trading stories, even doing homework together. We didn't have to talk all the time, just being together was enough. Sometimes I'd find Evan sketching in the backyard, and I'd join him with my notebook. Other times he'd leave a doodle on my desk, a cat in sunglasses, a horse with a funny hat, and I'd text him a silly joke in return. We became a team, navigating the minefield of blended family life one day at a time. The school year loomed closer. With it came whispers, rumors about the new girl and her stepbrother. People stared. Some made jokes. Evan and I ignored them, leaning into our inside jokes, our pact. If they only knew how boring we are, I said one day, they'd be so disappointed, Evan grinned. We made a list of things we wanted to do before summer ended: eat ice cream for breakfast camp in the backyard, paint a mural in the garage, watch the sunrise from the roof. Every time we crossed something off, I felt a little more at home, not just in the house, but in my own skin. That night, as I lay in bed, I looked at the drawing Evan had given me. The stars and moon seemed to glow in the darkness, a promise that I wasn't alone. I didn't know what would happen when school started again, or if our parents would ever figure out how to be happy. But for now, I had someone on my side, and sometimes that's all it takes to break the walls. There's a moment in every story where you think things are finally turning around. You start to believe in happy endings. But real life isn't that neat. Sometimes, just when you start to breathe easier, the ground shifts beneath you. For me, that moment came on a Monday in late July. A day that started with hope and ended with something close to heartbreak. I woke before sunrise, the sky outside my window barely pale. It was my birthday. My first one in this new house with this new family, and honestly, I wasn't expecting much. Mom had been working late all week. Mark was stressed about something at work, and I'd overheard their tired voices arguing about bills after they thought we'd gone to bed. I tried not to let it matter. Still, I couldn't help wishing for something, some tiny sign that someone remembered, that I hadn't just disappeared. When I came downstairs, the house was dark. No balloons, no cards, not even the smell of pancakes. I swallowed the ache in my throat and poured myself a glass of orange juice, sitting at the table, pretending not to care. Evan's door was closed. I waited, hoping he'd at least say happy birthday. But time passed, slow and heavy. Maybe he forgot too. At school, things didn't get better. Harper and her friends were waiting by my locker, grinning in that way that always spelled trouble. "So, birthday girl," Harper said, her voice sweet and sharp at the same time. "Did your mom remember to bake you a cake? Or did you have to light candles on your frozen pizza again?" Laughter rippled around her. I tried to ignore them, shoving my books into my bag, but their words stuck to me like burrs. "She probably just wanted attention," one of them whispered. "Not quiet enough." I didn't cry. I'd learned not to give them the satisfaction. But it hurt. Of course it did. By the time I got home, my chest felt tight. I went straight to my room, shut the door, and threw myself on the bed. My phone buzzed. Birthday messages from old friends. Back home, a funny meme from my dad, even a video call from my cousin. I smiled. But it felt distant, like it was happening to someone else. I was so deep in my thoughts that I didn't notice anything at first. Not until the sun had almost set, and I sat up to switch on the lamp. And then I saw it. My room had changed. Hand-painted. Paper stars dangled from the ceiling, each one a different shade of blue and silver. On the wall above my desk, a row of photos had been pinned. a timeline of the past few months. The wildflowers in the backyard, my first day at school, the origami crane, and even a blurry selfie of me and Evan laughing on the porch. Beneath the photos, a note in Evan's unmistakable handwriting. I know this isn't the birthday you wanted, but I'm glad you're here, Lila. I'm glad we're family. P.S. Don't forget your wish. For a second, I couldn't move. I just stared, trying to take it all in. My throat closed up and I felt something warm, a little painful, behind my eyes. Evan was standing in the doorway, hands shoved in his pockets, looking everywhere but at me. You did all this? I managed, my voice shaking. He shrugged, blushing a little. Yeah, well, you deserve a good birthday, even if it's just me and some paper stars. It's perfect, I whispered. He smiled, and for the first time, all day I felt seen. Really seen. But sometimes happiness doesn't last. Not when you're a target for gossip. Not when people are looking for something to twist. The next morning, the rumors started. I heard them before I even made it to first. Period. Did you hear? Lila's stepbrother snuck into her room last night. Maybe that's why she was smiling this morning. Gross. Aren't they, related now? The whispers hissed in the hallways, slipping into classrooms and bathrooms, slithering under doors. By lunchtime, it felt like the whole school was staring. I tried to find Evan, but he'd vanished. My stomach churned. Was he angry? Embarrassed? Was this my fault? When I finally saw him at the end of the day, he was leaning against the fence, headphones on, eyes fixed on the ground. I walked up, unsure, afraid of what he'd say. He pulled off his headphones and forced a half smile. Hey, Evan, I'm sorry, I blurted out, about everything. The rumors, you didn't ask for any of this. He shrugged. It's not your fault, Lila. People talk. They always will. But, I started. He cut me off, quiet but firm. Let them. I don't care what they think. Do you? I wanted to say no, but I wasn't sure it was true. Evan looked at me, really looked, like he always did. Family is what we choose to fight for, he said, not what everyone else thinks it is. His words settled in my chest, steady and strong. Come on, he said. Let's go home. That night, I lay awake, replaying the day's events in my mind. The stars still danced above my head, the photos reminding me of the good that was still possible. I realized something then. Something I hadn't wanted to admit. Belonging isn't about other people's approval. It's about the people who show up when things get hard. The ones who don't let go, no matter what the world thinks. I wasn't sure if things would get easier, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't alone. A few days later, I found Evan sitting on the porch, sketchbook, open, his pencil flying across the page. He looked up when I sat beside him, offering the smallest of smiles. What are you drawing? I asked. He held up the sketch. Our backyard, wildflowers in bloom, stars overhead, two small figures side by side on the porch. Us. I laughed, feeling lighter. Looks like us, he nodded. It is. I thought we should remember this summer. Even the hard parts. We sat together, the quiet between us easy now, not heavy or tense. The world could say what it wanted. We knew who we were, and that was enough. If you're waiting for some big dramatic ending, you'll have to keep waiting. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just hold your ground. Sometimes the best ending is knowing you survived. You'd think after a summer like ours, I'd be ready for anything. But goodbyes never get easier. Even when you know you're not really leaving, just changing, growing, stepping through a door that wasn't there before. The last week of summer arrived with a strange energy, all sharp edges and golden light. The rumors at school were already fading, replaced by the next scandal. Harper and her friends barely looked at me anymore. Even the teachers seemed to sense that the old gossip had lost its flavor. But inside our house, something had shifted. Mom and Mark fought less. They started eating dinner together again, making little jokes about burnt toast and the neighbor's yappy dog. Sometimes, when they thought no one was looking, they held hands. Even the silence between them felt softer. now like everyone was breathing out after months of holding it in. Evan and I fell into a rhythm: chores, homework, shared glances across the table, long walks in the backyard at dusk. We didn't talk about the past or the whispers or even what would happen next. We just existed together. It was enough. The night before school started, I found Evan in the garage, hunched over a canvas, his headphones blasting some song. I didn't know. He looked up when I walked in, wiping paint off his hands. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. I shook my head. "You?" He grinned. "Not a chance." I watched as he worked. Bold lines, bright colors, a whole universe unfolding, from his mind to the canvas. It hit me suddenly how much I would miss this. Not just him or the gifts or the late-night talks, but the feeling of belonging, of being part of someone's world. Do you ever wish things could just stay like this? I asked, quieter than I meant to. Evan paused, paintbrush hovering in the air. All the time. But nothing ever stays, Lila. Things change, people change. It doesn't mean we lose each other. He set down his brush and pulled something from behind the canvas, a wrapped bundle, clumsy and a little messy, but unmistakably for me. "Here," he said, pushing it into my hands. "Early first day of school present." I peeled back the wrapping, revealing a painting. It showed the four of us, Mom, Mark, Evan, and me, standing under the hand-painted stars from my birthday. Wildflowers bloomed at our feet. In the background, the house glowed warm and bright. My throat closed up. I love it," I whispered. He smiled, eyes shining. "I wanted you to remember. No matter what, you're part of this family. You always will be." I didn't know what to say, so I hugged him. Tight. And for once, he hugged me back, just as hard. The next morning was a blur of nerves and cereal and last-minute hair disasters. Mark drove us to school, filling the car with corny jokes and classic rock. Mom handed me a brown bag lunch with a silly note inside. "Go get 'em, birthday girl." I rolled my eyes, but my heart felt lighter. Evan and I walked through the front doors together, shoulders brushing, and this time I didn't flinch when people stared. Let them look, I thought. They don't know what we've been through. They don't know how strong we've become. First period came and went, then second, and then lunch. I sat under the old oak tree by the soccer field, biting into my sandwich, feeling the weight of the day settle in. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. A shadow fell over me. Evan sat down, dropping his backpack with a thud. "Still surviving?" he teased. "Barely," I shot back, grinning. We watched the clouds. For a while, the silence easy. Then Evan leaned over, dropping a folded note in my lap. "One last scavenger hunt," it read. I raised an eyebrow. "You planning on making me run all over campus?" He smirked. "Maybe. Or maybe I just want to see if you've been paying attention." The first clue led me to the art room, where a tiny paper bird waited on the windowsill. The next pointed me to the library, where a stack of books hid a wildflower seed packet. I found the third clue taped under my locker, a quote from the notebook he'd given me months ago. "You are stronger than you think." By the time I'd solved the final clue, my heart was pounding, not from running, but from something else: excitement, gratitude, the wild sense that I'd found my place. Evan was waiting by the gym doors, hands in his pockets, smiling his shy, lopsided smile. "You did it," he said. "Not just the scavenger hunt, all of it. This whole crazy summer." I looked at him, seeing not just my stepbrother, but my friend, my family, my anchor in a world that wouldn't stop spinning. "Couldn't have done it without you," I replied. He shrugged, but I saw the truth in his eyes. That night, back at home, I hung Evan's painting on my wall. The paper stars still danced overhead, casting their shadows over the wildflowers I'd pressed between the pages of my notebook. Everything had changed, and yet, here I was, whole, unbroken, stronger than before. Before bed, I found one last note on my pillow. "You're not alone, Lila. Not ever. Even when you feel like you are, I'll be here." Family, right? A tear slipped down my cheek, but it was a good kind of ache, the kind that lets you know you're alive, that you matter, that you're loved. As I turned out the light, I realized something. The thing I couldn't resist all along wasn't the gifts or the notes or the scavenger hunts. It was hope. It was the quiet, unbreakable promise that someone out there cared enough to fight for me, even on the days I couldn't fight for myself. If you're still waiting for the dramatic ending, maybe this is it. I started the summer believing I was alone, convinced that no one could reach me, that no one would try. But I was wrong. Evan put something inside my room that I couldn't resist. The possibility of belonging. A reason to stay. And as the stars spun slowly above me, I made a silent promise to myself. No matter what tomorrow brought, I would hold onto that feeling, the certainty that even in a world full of strangers, I had found family. And in the quiet darkness, I finally let myself believe I was home. End.